good to be back in England, and it's good to see all you again. Take it, dude.
Few genres have had the lasting impact of punk. 1976 is one of those seismic dividing lines in popular music, a history-destroying year zero, the point after which everything changed. It was the year the Ramones released their debut, the year that the first singles from the UK punk scene were set loose upon an unprepared public. And while the punks wanted to remove themselves from the past, burn all that had come before, nothing happens within a vacuum. These bands didn't appear out of nowhere with the key principles of the genre locked in place. This innovative, minimalist, free chords and the truth, turbo-powered music had to have precedent. There were other artists that led up to this era-defining moment in music that were either forgotten, ignored, or not given credit. This is how punk became punk. Punk, at its absolute essence, is rock and roll boiled down to its bare bones. So it makes sense that the first rumblings of the genre came just after Elvis. One of the artists inspired by and wanting to outdo the king was one Jerry Lott, aka The Phantom. His lone single, Love Me, took rockabilly to strange, demented new places.
Got a chance at last, do the things we wanna do. Don't hesitate, I can't wait. Love me.
Note the frantic, somewhat unhinged vocal, the cacophony and pace of the recording. It's not punk as we know it, but it's a definite move forward from the more sedate work of Mr. Presley or Buddy Holly. A definite pioneer in proto-punk was Link Wray. His instrumental track Rumble would prove hugely influential to the whole spectrum of rock music due to its use of distortion, feedback, and it was one of the first tracks to use power chords.
And I heard this music, dun, 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 and it was called Rumble. I left school emotionally at that moment.
He supposedly achieved this thick, aggressive sound by stabbing and slicing the speaker cone of his amp, as well as playing extremely loud. Despite having no lyrics, the song was banned on US radio due to fear it would provoke public disturbance. While the majority of his work was instrumental, the real pre-punk eureka moment was when his distorted proto-surf rock was paired with the distorted, ragged vocals of gospel singer Bunker Hill on The Girl Can't Dance.
Ah, you know not everybody told his mama girl can't dance, she's mine, all mine. You know not everybody told his mama girl can't dance, she's mine, all mine.
Many proto-punk nuggets came from the garage rock genre. Simply, they played rhythm and blues fast and loose. The first track worth mentioning is Louie Louie by the Kingsmen, a ramshackle performance with slurred, unintelligible lyrics, distorted chords holding the whole thing together. Rock and roll at its most elemental. If you wanted a flag in the ground moment between rock and roll and proto-punk, Louie Louie is that. The track also established punk's tendency to outrage the powers that be. It was the subject of an FBI investigation about the supposed obscenity of the garbled lyrics that ended without prosecution. Despite this, Louie Louie features one of the first instances of fuck on a charting single, from the drummer yelling the word after dropping his drumstick. Other garage rock bands brought other elements to the primordial stew. Surfing Bird by the Trashmen had speed and the insane screeching, belching singing that the more off-the-wall punks would adopt. Washington's The Sonics released Psycho, which is pretty much the template that later bands would refine, fast, loose and manic, with Bob Bennett's machine gun drum fills and Jerry Lorosley's insane screams. Psycho! The Monks added a wad of venomous bile to the mix on tracks like I Hate You. Music historian Kelly Stoltz noted that they outsexed the Sex Pistols 10 years before any other punk band emerged. Ramping up the speed even more was 7 in 7 Is by Love.
You can throw me if you wanna, 'cause I'm born and I go boop, bip, bip, boop, bip, bip, yeah!
The song's frantic demands meant the drums took more than 30 takes to get right. Finally, Question Mark and the Mysterians of 96 Tears fame were the first band to be described as punk in the press, though this was 4 years after their big hit. Alongside this, 1960s Britain was creating loud, primal rock songs that were comparable to American garage rock. Early singles by the Kinks, You Really Got Me, and All Day and All of the Night were simplistic, chord-heavy, and used distortion for added crunch. My Generation by The Who furthered the punkifying of the British invasion with its powerful bass attack, its Gatling fills, and Roger Daltrey's stuttering vocal that combined barely concealed frustration with almost saying a very bad word.
My generation, baby, why don't you all fade away?
The Sex Pistols would later pull off the same move on Pretty Vacant. Back in the US, the Velvet Underground released the hugely influential White Light, White Heat. The oft-repeated quip about the Velvets was that they didn't sell many records, but everyone who bought one went out and started a band. White Light, White Heat flirted with experimental and noise rock decades before it was named as such, but most notably with its distortion, free-chord structures, and Lou Reed's half-sung words about amphetamine and urban decay, it gave a lot of future punks a jumping-off point. British band Buzzcocks formed because of Pete Shelley and Howard Devoto's shared love of the 17-minute extended jam, Sister Ray. Punk truly began to take shape in Detroit 1969. Released in February, the MC5's debut, Kick Out the Jams, a live album, took all that had come before, revved it up and made it raw. The title track is the inverse of Velvet Underground's Sister Ray, loudly commanding you to cease the endless 17-minute jamming and making it lean, full tilt rock and roll. It also helped that its introduction is one of the most iconic pieces of stage banter of all time.
And right now it's time to take out the jams, motherfucker!
The MC5 had it all. The speed, the attitude, and most importantly, they influenced another band of enraged Detroiters. The Stooges' self-titled album came out later that year. It is considered one of the essential forerunners of the punk rock movement. The sound is more or less all there. The distortion, the temperament, and within the structures, this primal screaming version of rock and roll was refined to breaking point, as well as Ron Aston's guitar that sounded like a sludge-splattered Keith Richards. The real MVP was their frontman, formerly Jim Osterberg, now Iggy Pop, the man dubbed the Godfather of punk. His frenzied James Brown meets Jim Morrison vocals, his outrageous pseudonym, and his destructive, stage-diving live persona would inspire punks forevermore. Back in the UK, there were further developments in punk style from a band that is rarely mentioned in the same breath, Led Zeppelin. Communication Breakdown from their debut album is fast, frantic, and features a rapid downstroke guitar playing style. This would become a key influence on Johnny Ramone of the Ramones. Mickey Lee of the Rattlers recalls Ramone once saying to him, "Most people don't realise that. That's how rock and roll should be played. All of it. Everything should be a downstroke." Those around him at the time say he built up skill at this playstyle by practicing the song over and over again for the bulk of his early career. And if you compare Communication Breakdown to, say, Judy is a Punk, you can hear the connection. Hailing from Boston, major Velvet Underground converts, the Modern Lovers, added to the pre-punk canon with Too Cold Wonder, Roadrunner. It cribbed the simplicity and rhythm of the Velvet's Sister Ray, but shortened it to a more concise 4 minutes. The lyrics are a stream of consciousness about driving about in your car with the radio on. Singer Jonathan Richman's voice is also notable, untrained and off-key. Jonathan didn't have a standard voice. He just wanted to show the world that anyone could do it. All you had to have was feeling. This rudimentary ethos would bleed into the UK punk scene. If you could write something as simple as Roadrunner, you could form a band. Another Detroit-based proto-punk outfit that deserves a mention is a band called Def, consisting of 3 brothers that fused funk musicianship with The Who's aggression to create a virtuoso, politically minded version of punk that bands like Bad Brains, Fugazi, Rage Against the Machine would make years later. Their debut single, Politicians in My Eyes, was released before the Ramones' debut. Def's music was mostly unheard until 2009, when they were rediscovered and correctly hailed as visionaries of the punk sound. For all intents and purposes, Patti Smith's Horses is the first legit and undeniable punk album. Simon Reynolds of The Observer wrote, "Pipping the Ramones' first album to the post by 5 months, Horses is generally considered not just to be one of the most startling debuts in rock history, but the spark that ignited the punk explosion. It's a fusion of all that came before, but like nothing else yet produced. She had political insight, simplistic song structures, and its beat poetry influenced lyricism took reference from Lou Reed. She even covered and reimagined a garage rock standard on the album's opening track, Them's Gloria. As well as the New York punk scene, Horses would influence British punks Susie and the Banshees and the Slits, in addition to R.E.M., the Smiths, and Hole. After that, punk was solidified as a music, as an attitude, as a way of life. It was a defined thing that people could absorb, copy, and embody. The Ramones released their self-titled debut in 1976, a loud, fast, and gloriously dumb 29 minutes that became punk's Year Zero. Blitzkrieg Bop became the genre's de facto anthem.
Let's go! Let's go! Let's go!
When the Ramones toured the UK, it kicked the British scene into galvanised existence. No longer a loose collection of pub rockers, proto-punks and misfits, but a movement that became key to the next 4 decades of British music. The first British group to release a single were The Damned.
I got a new rose, I got a good. Yes, I knew that I always would.
Unleashing New Rose a month before the Sex Pistols' Anarchy in the UK. It is not unfair to say that punk changed everything. Some of the most important bands ever came out of punk's initial afterglow. The Clash, Blondie, Black Flag, U2, New Order, The Cure and The Smiths. What was punk to our parents seems quaint today. No longer fuel for public outrage, but an embedded part of society itself. Punk impacted everything. And that's why you probably didn't mind that I said fuck so much.
You dirty fucker.
What a boy.
What a fucking rotter.
Well, that's it for tonight.
Punk may not be dead, but society has moved on. Thanks for watching. If you liked it, give us a like, maybe comment and subscribe. What's your favourite proto-punk tune? And what did I miss out? If you really love the video and everything else I'm doing, consider contributing on Patreon. I've got some great rewards for the various tiers, including exclusive playlists, getting to watch new videos early, and getting your name in the credits. As ever, I'd like to thank Savas, as well as new patron, Kelsey Dara. Thank you very much for your support. I will be back in about 2 weeks with a new video. See you then.